Are you naturally drawn to sad music? Do you get deeply moved by bittersweet literature, film and art? If so, you're not alone. Life's bittersweet edges have been enjoyed by human beings throughout history and around the world. But why? What is it about what Susan Cain describes as bittersweet melancholy that moves us so deeply? And why are we drawn to the enjoyment of what we often refer to, in my opinion, not correctly, as sad songs? I've felt the pull of bittersweet melancholy for as long as I can remember in my life. You know, even as a child, I wanted to weirdly revisit music and films that had previously made me cry. And this kind of beautiful ache and painful beauty has underpinned my relationship with the music that I enjoy and the music that I create. Powerful emotions like yearning and longing can shine a light on why I think some of us find energizing, generative and creative joy when we spend time in the melancholic realm of the bittersweet. I don't think we often have the right words in English to describe music properly, especially in everyday conversations. How often we use the words happy or sad to describe it. It's really not what we mean. Terms like bittersweet, yearning, melancholic, longing, poignant and moving can help us get closer to what we're trying to describe, but I think there's still some way to go within that. Art moves us when it gives expression to something within us that we're unable to maybe put into words or even recognise as a feeling. It provides fragments of language or expression for feelings, thoughts and sensations that we've failed to so far define. And that's what connects us to those things. Despite what we might assume, poignant music isn't creating a feeling inside of us. It's actually just giving our feelings somewhere to find their form, somewhere to belong. So what if sad songs don't make us feel sad, but rather allow us to feel the messy mix of all sorts of emotions that we otherwise push down and keep at bay? Everybody Hurts by R.E.M. was voted the saddest song of all time earlier this year in a survey of 2,000 music lovers conducted by one poll. The lyrics, you know, when your day is long and the night is yours alone, when you're sure you've had enough of this life, hang on. Don't let yourself go, because everybody cries, everybody hurts sometimes. I don't know about you, it's not sad. And as a song, it's kind of like a lullaby. I think it's a reassuring, comforting and compassionate lullaby in the sense of the lyrics speaking to a simple and universal human truth that we can all identify with. Whatever you think of the song, it's moving, it's emotional, and it might jerk tears in people, not because it's sad, but rather because it's safe. It speaks to the human condition. It speaks to the experience of life. Everybody hurts sometimes, regardless of who you are, where you're from, what you have. It's this emotionally cleansing experience. And we just pin this phrase, sad song, onto it very strangely. We live in a time where we find it harder and harder to wait for stuff, in large part because we don't have to very often. We have to wait for less and less. You know, more stuff is available instantly, whether it's digitally or like super fast delivery or whatever. But waiting is a gift. It's the gift of true enjoyment, not as something that just helps us become more virtuous and patient, but it's literally in the gap, in the waiting, where joy grows. That's where joy is found. When Twin Peaks: The Return was released in 2017, it was the most, for me, painfully beautiful experience. One episode was released per week between May and September. It went against the new norm of binge consumption that had developed over the previous however many years in the TV world. But there was a beautiful pain in longing to know what happened next, longing to get to that next episode. It's a yearning for completion. But that was alongside the joy of not knowing. I was given the gift of the dreaming, the wandering, the exploring, and not being able to consume it all at once. It's the same pain as not yet knowing who the killer is in a murder mystery, not knowing how a magic trick is done. You know, it gives rise to this painful this desperate desire. I've got to know what the answer is. Which on one level we believe having that next episode, knowing how the trick is done or whatever, will satiate some desire. But at another level we know it won't, not ultimately anyway. But the discovery never truly fills the hole. It never makes us whole, because the joy is in the waiting, in the not knowing, and the kind of joy that we get from that is impossible to bottle, because it's the joy of the in-between, the inconsolable longing for we know not what. It's undefinable, it's ungraspable, it's inarticulatable, if that's a word. Question: have you ever witnessed something so beautiful it was painful? A few years ago I visited a place called Wilpena Pound in South Australia with my friend Nat and his 2 daughters. And the night we were there, the conditions were perfect for what, in my view, was an obscenely beautiful sunset, the most beautiful sunset I've ever seen and potentially will ever see. And I felt this bizarre mix of emotions as I paid witness to that moment. There's this deep appreciation of the beauty before me. It was this expansive and warm and just loving feeling, like everything about the world was this lavish, excessive gift in that moment. But this was flanked by shadows of foreboding loss, the awareness that this moment would soon disappear below the horizon. And that's what I think yearning feels like. It both inspires and haunts us. Yearning is this deep longing for something we know is missing, but this longing is accompanied by the awareness that we can never truly acquire that missing thing, because it can't be perfectly conceptualized, articulated, defined, bottled, or captured. This is the bittersweet that Susan Cain talks about in her latest book. It's inside the bitter that the sweet belongs, not as 2 sides of a coin, but as an interweaving web that tangles together and cannot be separated. The important things are not precious despite their fleetingness or fragility. They're precious because they are fragile, because they are fleeting. Have you ever felt a homesickness for somewhere that doesn't exist, or somewhere you've never been? A lot of people talk about this, especially I've heard a lot of highly sensitive people talk about this, and introverts. This kind of homesickness is a way to describe a sense of deep yearning. Susan Cain talks about the pain of separation and the longing for reunion in her latest book, Bittersweet. Have you ever felt that? Like maybe you were born in the wrong era, or the wrong universe, or the wrong dimension, or something. You know, this feeling of exile actually connects us all. It drives some of the most wonderful human accomplishments and discoveries and artistic creations, as well as some of the more dreadful and violent and destructive projects when we don't know what to do with that sense of yearning, that sense of longing within. Rather than making you weird, what if this feeling is actually a deep and universal part of being human? In the new episode of the Gentle Rebel podcast, I'm kind of looking at this stuff in more detail. You know, where do we get the joy of sad songs and rainy days? What purpose does this serve? Does it have a purpose? And why is this attributed often in particular to highly sensitive people? Why is there a correlation there? And how can we cultivate a positive relationship with what C.S. Lewis describes as the inconsolable longing for we know not what? Don't worry, it's not as dour as it might come across. I absolutely love talking about this stuff. I just find it really, spiriting, engaging, and energizing. So if you fancy exploring it more, then come over and listen to the latest episode of the podcast.